Hello and welcome to today's conversation. I wanted to talk about stress and how we deal with it as humans, and about our physiology and our animalistic nature, and how compared to how animals deal with stress. So basically, there are lots of cycles that happen in life. Nature is cyclical, right? And when it comes to stress, the ideal is that something stressful happens, we recover from it, and we return to our baseline, and we stay at that baseline until the next stressor occurs, and we go through the same cycle. So when you think about, let's talk about animals first. An animal in nature, a predator shows up, their adrenaline gets pumping, just like us, heart rate increases, respiration increases, blood is directed away from our gut and away from digestion to the heart and lungs, so that we can move quickly and more efficiently. So because we are animals, the same thing happens when we get stressed out, whether it's an actual threat to our immediate safety, or whether it's something that creates stress that is a pillar in our modern life. Like, for example, a presentation at school or work, a stressful conversation with somebody, our body doesn't know the difference, adrenaline is released. And that's not necessarily a bad thing. Stress in healthy doses and when we're able to return to baseline is a good thing, because it improves our resiliency and our ability to trust ourselves in how we handle stress. So, again, the things that cause us stress are usually not something life-threatening in our modern society. But that doesn't mean that we don't need to do things to return to baseline after the stress has passed. And for humans, that can look like doing a workout, going for a walk, doing some meditating, doing something creative, doing something with your hands to distract your mind, doing something that's like playtime, having social time with people, talking it through if it was an emotional thing with someone that you trust, all those kinds of things, working through our emotions. Prioritizing those things is kind of socially unacceptable in our society, right? Because what we are conditioned to prioritize and believe is that, we have to aim for a certain amount of success, and we also are required to do a certain amount of work in order to earn a living so that we can have food and a roof over our heads in this world. So what that means is that we have been conditioned to believe that activities that are active activities are sort of like worth our time and worth more, deserving of more of our attention than all of those like restorative activities that I just named. Because you could see how, going out to the grocery store, or getting up early to prepare for that meeting or presentation are important things. I'm not saying that they're not, but then it's like the balance has gotten tipped so far that somehow we never make time to do those restorative activities, and we also feel guilty doing it because it doesn't feel like they are going to help us immediately secure more security, more wellness, more health, because it's not like, it's hard to cognitively understand how something like taking an hour of playtime, whatever that looks like for you. For me, it means like cooking, or going for a walk in nature, how doing that actually does also contribute to our success. But it's hard to comprehend that because it's not an activity that is actually seeking out reassurance, if that makes sense. Ask me questions if it doesn't. I love to hear from you guys. Post in the comments, send me an email, whatever you want. So we've realized for a while that those restorative activities are missing in our lives, and our health is suffering because we don't do enough of them as much as we should. So it's great that we realize that. I'm so happy. Hooray, everyone, myself included. But realizing that something is unhealthy or maladaptive and actually undoing, generations of conditioning to discredit the value of those activities is an entirely different thing. I would definitely say I've been thinking over the last couple of days as I increase the amount of content that I share and all of that, I've been realizing that it has taken me a good, I would say I really got started on the spiritual path in 2014. So it's taken me a good 7-8 years of what I just mentioned, realizing that that I have been subject to maladaptive conditioning and that I want to change it, to actually being able to live by those changes. It takes a lot of work, so go easy on yourself. It doesn't happen overnight, FYI. So I want to move into talking about the physical symptoms of stress and how we deal with them. So I mentioned at the beginning, when we get stressed, our body releases adrenaline. And what that does is it kind of like, it tenses our muscles up in addition to all the other physiological changes I mentioned. And it gets our body into this like ready to fight or flight mode, which like rightly it should be. But then the stressor, the modern life stressor, the examples I've been giving, that event passes, but our body, because we haven't been physical, doesn't necessarily return to baseline, because maybe there's a lot of other factors, right? Like what if you do your presentation and you nailed it, but there's something else that you have to do later that day that's on your mind, or there's another big meeting the following day, like for some reason the stress is prolonged, so you don't get that chance to have restorative conversations, thoughts, activities that I mentioned. So what happens is the stress builds up in your body, and it needs to go somewhere, right? Because the whole point of the stress response is to allow us to propel our bodies to fight or flight. So if we don't do something like that, then that stress gets held in our muscles and our tissues. And we know that prolonged stress leads to chronic inflammation, which is the precursor to like so many of our modern, diseases of the Western world: cancer, diabetes, morbid obesity, heart disease, metabolic syndrome, depression and anxiety, all that good stuff. So this brings me to my conclusion. Our bodies need benefit from moving after we have been through some stress. And shaking is something that is known to help move stress out of our bodies and bring us back to baseline. So I was doing some research the other day and I found this really cool thing. It's called tension and trauma release exercises. And it's a set of exercises that involve mobilizing the feet, ankles, calves, hamstrings, quads, psoas muscles, which are the ones that control the movement, some of the movements of your hips, the forward and back. Doing those things actually helps reduce our stress levels, which makes perfect sense because those are all of the muscles that we use when we are going to run, when we're going to fight or flight. And coincidentally, those are also the muscles that we use when we're shimmying in belly dance. Isn't that so cool? So that's what I'm going to be doing today in my other video of my dance class for the week. Is I'm going to be teaching some shimmies, and we'll be doing some of that together, because you got to get that energy out and you have to get it going somewhere. The last thing that I want to say is that you may not even realize that stress is building up in your body, and some of the ways that can manifest are emotionally, like you have a short fuse. You feel really easily frustrated, easily overwhelmed. You have a hard time relaxing. Maybe you're avoiding seeing others. You're struggling with feelings of worthiness or low self-esteem, and you're feeling lonely. Other ways that it can show up physically, aside from the chronic diseases that I mentioned, which develop after years of chronic stress and inflammation. In the short term, relatively short term, I mean like not 5 minutes, but more like days, weeks, months, it can look like having low energy, having a lowered libido, having headaches, having your gut out of whack. Maybe you have acid reflux, constipation, diarrhea, gas. You're just not digesting well, because like I mentioned, when we're constantly stressed, the blood is diverted away from our digestive organs in order to do other things, because it's like, oh, we can digest later. Anyways, yeah, muscle tension, aches and pains, trouble sleeping, or maybe you're getting sick a lot because, like I mentioned, like it messes, being constantly stressed really messes with your immune system, and we can talk about that another time. So that's me. There is, if you liked what I have to say, you're intrigued by it, you want to join my community, all the links are right below this video in terms of, getting a reading from me. I'm a Reiki master. I do tarot readings. I have a one-on-one coaching program. I offer free discovery calls. If you want to learn more about that, you can book a call with me. And you can also choose to join my newsletter and get regular access to my tidbits like this. So I hope you have a great day, and I'm so happy that you're here. Mwah. Talk to you soon.